Virtual power plants could save the utility industry billions of dollars without any loss of resiliency on the grid, according to a new study. The U.S. House and the U.S. Senate have both voted now to overturn the Biden administration's pause on solar tariffs. And investment in solar worldwide remains strong, while other investment on other energy sources is declining. I'm Jay Warmke with Blue Rock Station, and this is the news from the solar industry for the week of May 8th. Now, a recent study by the Brattle Group, and Brattle Group was doing this study for Google, looked at the cost effectiveness of virtual power plants versus other ways to expand grid generating capacity. Now, a virtual power plant is a network of decentralized power sources such as rooftop arrays or battery systems or even electric vehicles that are all combined to form a virtual power plant. Now, what this study found when they compared 400 megawatt systems, they compared gas power plants versus utility scale battery systems versus virtual power plants. They did find that the virtual power plants were between 40 to 60% cheaper than the alternatives, but provided the same amount of reliability to the grid. Now, this projects, or the study projected a 60 gigawatt need for new production over the coming decade. So this savings on virtual power plants would save between $15 and $35 billion to the utility system as this expansion takes place. Now, this does not count the social benefits of virtual power plants, such as reduced CO2 emissions, the reduced need for transmission lines, and the fact that these systems will be more resilient. Now, both the House and the Senate, primarily the Republicans in these bodies, but joined by a few Democrats, have both voted to overturn the Biden administration's 2-year pause on tariffs that are going to be assessed to the 4 nations in Southeast Asia that were seen to be sort of trying to get around the Chinese tariff implementation. These nations are Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand. Now, the House voted 221 to 202, and on May 3rd, the Senate voted 56 to 41 to overturn this 2-year pause. The pause was put in place because essentially the solar industry was devastated when 80% of the panels that are available to the market suddenly dried up. This is largely a symbolic action, as are much of the actions from Congress, because Biden has said he will veto this measure, and then it goes back and would require 2/3 from these bodies to overturn it, which is very unlikely to happen. A study by the Mercon Capital Group has found that the funding sources of most energy systems from venture capitalists are slowing as the global economy begins to slow a bit, with the exception of solar. Now, in the first quarter of this year, for example, storage investment has slowed by about 8%. During the same time period, year over year, investment in solar has increased about 11%. Now, a lot of this is being seen as being driven by the Inflation Reduction Act here in the United States, also the war in the Ukraine, which has led most of Europe to look towards energy independence, and that's driving a large expansion in solar in that continent. And the Center for Biological Diversity, the Protect Our Communities Foundation, as well as the Environmental Working Group, have all joined together to file an appeal within the California Court of Appeals to try and overturn or reverse Net Metering 3.0. Now, Net Metering 3.0 went into effect in California on April 15th, and among other things, it reduces the amount of compensation to owners of solar arrays by 80%. Now, this group is arguing that this is simply an attempt by the utility industry to gut rooftop solar and protect their business model because basically distributed energy is a threat to their operational model. This will go before the Court of Appeals, and the utilities as well as the Public Utilities Commission have 30 days to respond. And that's the news from the solar industry for this week. We'll see you next week.